Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
Zero-calorie Lipton green tea that increases your metabolism. Let's stay fit with Lipton green tea.
හරිම සුදුයි.
On 1st at 9 to 9, this Saturday, the 10th of December 2022. Progress. IMF chief says she was able to have fruitful talks with China regarding Sri Lanka's debt crisis. Crimes of the past. US State Department slaps sanctions on former head of the Sri Lankan platoon, Prabhat Bolatwata. Inclement weather. Thousands of livestock die and over 10,000 people affected due to inclement climate and weather conditions across Sri Lanka.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. On the top story for tonight, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, says that she had fruitful discussions with Chinese authorities pertaining to repeated calls for accelerating debt treatments for countries like Zambia and Sri Lanka. She said momentum needs to be built on the agreement of Chad's debt treatment and accelerate and finalize the debt treatments for Zambia and Sri Lanka, paving the way for disbursements from the IMF and multilateral development banks. Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, President of the World Bank, David Malpass, and other financial leaders attended the 7th 1+6 roundtable, convened in the province of Anhui in China with officials from the People's Bank of China, China's Finance Ministry and its Exim Bank and China Development Bank. Following this, issuing a statement, IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva said that she had a fruitful exchange with Premier Lee this week on her repeated calls for accelerating debt treatments for countries like Zambia and Sri Lanka. Georgieva said the discussions touched on the common framework for debt treatment set up in late 2020 by China, the United States and other group of 20 major economies, as well as some specific cases of countries seeking debt relief. She added that the implementation of the common framework process has been halting, with only one country, Chad, having completed the debt treatment process and its agreement not resulting in any actual reductions of the country's debt. Georgieva said that they need to build on the momentum of the agreement on Chad's debt treatment and accelerate and finalize the debt treatments for Zambia and Sri Lanka, which would allow for disbursements from the IMF and multilateral development banks. Georgieva and other countries also faced mounting debt distress given tightening global financial conditions. She added that they had discussions on how they can prevent individual cases of debt distress from triggering a global debt crisis, calling again for quicker, more predictable progress on debt treatments and expansion of the framework to more countries. Georgieva said that she saw space for a platform for more systematic engagement on debt issues, where China can play an active role but gave no further details. In the meantime, World Bank President David Malpass said that the discussions focused on the urgent need for rapid progress on debt issues, adding that the changes in China's positions are critical in this effort. He welcomed support voiced by Premier Li Keqiang for a systematic engagement on debt during the meetings and underscored the need for transparent disclosure of China's loan contracts, removal of non-disclosure and non-restructuring clauses, and hidden collateral and escrow arrangements. In the meantime, thousands of livestock are dead and hundreds more have fallen sick due to the extreme cold conditions experienced in the island. This condition is a result of Cyclone Mandus, which is currently brewing in the Bay of Bengal. Meanwhile, heavy rains around the island has damaged more than 2,000 houses, affecting over 10,000 people. The Disaster Management Centre says that people in 16 districts are victims of the current inclement weather conditions.
The Department of Meteorology says that the cyclonic storm Mandus has moved northwestwards and crossed North Tamil Nadu, Puducherry and South Andhra Pradesh coast over the southwest Bay of Bengal during the early hours today. Under the influence of this system, several areas across Sri Lanka experienced strong winds and heavy rains in last 2 days. As such, very rough seas were observed yesterday in the sea areas off the coast, extending from Mannar to Hambantota via Colombo and Galle. Meanwhile, according to the data provided by the Disaster Management Centre, 10,434 people have been affected so far by the prevailing weather conditions. The department further added that 2,721 residences in several areas of Badulla, Monaragala, Nuwara Eliya, Ampara, Batiklo, Trincomalee, Ratnapura, Kegol, Jaffna, Mullaitivu, Vavuniya, Kilinochchi, Mannar and Hambantota districts have been partially damaged. According to the department, 3 fatalities have been reported so far attributed to the adverse weather conditions.
And house damage has been recorded partially, especially more than 2,000 houses been partially damaged. All these houses been assessed and the compensations are soon given to the affected people. And the district disaster management units and the district officials and the National Disaster Relief Services with the Disaster Management Centre is coordinating all these process until the relief is completed. And we always observing the situations and providing the early warning, and the 117 call center is completely open, and also the trying languages could be managed, and also it's running on in 24/7 basis. Still we are requesting all the general public to contact 117 call center to all the disaster management activities and the response activities as well as the coordination activities as well.
Meanwhile, in other developments, the walls of a building in the area of Madirigiriya in Polonnaruwa district had collapsed and completely destroyed the building. Further, 10 residences in the area of Kantale in Trincomalee district were damaged after several trees collapsed into them as a result of the strong winds which blew across the area. Meanwhile, the Livestock Division of the Ministry of Agriculture said earlier today that the number of cattle, buffaloes and goats that have died in the northern and eastern provinces has exceeded 1,000 due to the changes in weather conditions reported in recent days. According to the department, the adverse weather conditions have triggered the death of nearly 836 cattle and 256 goats in several areas of the northern and eastern provinces. Further, owners were seen lighting bonfires to keep the sick cows warm. Issuing a statement, the Ministry of Agriculture stated that although it is believed that the cause of death of animals is the cold weather, the samples of the corpse of the dead animals have already been sent to laboratories to find out the real cause of death of the animals. The Livestock Division further stated that the meat of dead animals should not be taken for human consumption. Taking this into consideration, President Ranil Wickremesinghe meanwhile has ordered the suspension of the transportation of beef and mutton at district and provincial levels with immediate effect to ensure public health safety. Meanwhile, issuing its general weather forecast for tomorrow, the Department of Meteorology says that showers or thunder showers may occur at several areas in the northern, north central and eastern provinces during the afternoon or night, while spells of showers may occur in the northwestern province and in Mannar district during the morning. The department also warns the fishing and naval communities of temporarily strong gusty winds and very rough seas during thunder showers.
Now, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime are working with the Department of Prisons in Sri Lanka to enhance the skills of inmates in modern agriculture practices. Under the project, officials and inmates are provided with a training on sustainable agriculture practices with the intention of supporting the inmates' access to livelihoods in agriculture sector at the point of reintegration into society.
Accordingly, a selection of agricultural land under the Mahara Prison and the Pallansena Youth Correctional Centre is being utilised to establish sustainable farming structures. Under this program, training on sustainable agriculture practices for inmates and officials engaged in agriculture within these prisons are being provided by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Technical equipment such as greenhouses, irrigation systems and mushroom cultivation units, irrigation systems including solar water pumps and sprinkler systems are also being provided under the project. Further, the officials and inmates will be granted certificates to recognize the skills developed as a part of the project and support the inmates' access to livelihoods in the agriculture sector at the point of reintegration into society. Speaking on the initiative, FAO representative for Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Vimalendra Sharan stated that the technological knowledge and skills transferred through this project will support the participants by providing expanded employment opportunities in the agriculture sector. Meanwhile, speaking on the UNODC's commitment, the head of office of United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime stated that UNODC's Global Maritime Crime Program is established to further support Sri Lanka prisons to improve their capacities in managing secure, sustainable and human rights compliant detention facilities that also promote effective rehabilitation. She also added that the UNODC would like to see this project contributing towards improved mental and physical well-being of the prisoners while further encouraging Sri Lanka to meet international standards in treatment of prisoners and prison facilities.
The US State Department imposed sanctions on the former head of a Sri Lankan platoon known as the Tripoli Platoon, Prabhat Bulatwata, for a gross violation of human rights and degrading treatment to a Sri Lankan journalist, Keith Noya. The State Department went on to say that all property and interests in property of individuals or entities in the US or under the control of the US are blocked, while his immediate family members are made ineligible for entry to the US. The United States imposed sanctions on yet another Sri Lankan military officer for human rights abuses in their latest action to promote accountability for corruption and human rights abuses around the world. The US State Department, in a statement, named Prabhat Bulatwata, the former head of a covert Sri Lankan army platoon known as the Tripoli Platoon, for gross violation of human rights and degrading treatment of a Sri Lankan journalist. It said, all property and interests in property of individuals or entities in the US or under the control of the US are blocked, and they and their immediate family members are made ineligible for entry to the US. Bulatwata led the covert platoon of the Sri Lanka Army, the Tripoli Military Intelligence Platoon based in Slave Island. The platoon under the leadership of Bulatwata was implicated in a string of attacks against journalists, including the assassination of the Sunday leader editor Lasantha Wickramatunge, the abduction and assault on journalist Keith Noya, the attack on Rivera editor Upali Tennakun, and journalist Namal Pereira. In addition, the statement went on to say that Section 7031C of the US Constitution provides that in cases where there is credible information that officials of foreign governments have been involved in significant corruption or a gross violation of human rights, those individuals and their immediate family members are generally ineligible for entry into the United States and must be either publicly or privately designated. The US State Department says that this action taken against significant corruption is one in a string of such actions being taken by the department to promote accountability for corruption and human rights abuse around the world on the occasion of International Anti-Corruption Day and on the eve of International Human Rights. Last year, the US State Department similarly listed two Sri Lankan soldiers, Chandan Hettiarachi, Navy officer, and Sunil Ratnayaka, a staff sergeant of the Sri Lanka Army, holding them accountable for gross violations of human rights. Welcome back in your business news. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka announced today that Sri Lankan migrant worker remittances increased to $384.4 million in November this year. Accordingly, the cumulative figure of the first 11 months of the year is reported as $3,313.9 million. Sri Lanka had observed an increase of 12% in workers' remittances in the month of October this year, compared to the inflows recorded in the same period of last year. Meanwhile, figures released by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka showed that worker remittances in the month of October had increased by $38 million when compared with the month of September this year. The Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, says the law in Sri Lanka from 1994 to 2016 permitted exporters to have their export proceeds overseas, and the Central Bank's policy decision to peg the rupee created black market incentives for exporters to have their export proceeds overseas instead of repatriating the funds to the country for conversion. Responding to Indiva Riyamavattu on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, Governor of the Central Bank said that measures taken by the CBSL to have a flexible exchange rate amongst other requirements encouraged exporters to repatriate $1 billion as export proceeds into the country.
Repatriation of export proceeds is a hot topic now in recent times, especially with the Justice Minister claiming that staggering $53 billion has not been repatriated to Sri Lanka during the past 12 years by exporters, including $3 billion just last year alone.
I have to make it clear here, that was basically linked to what I said in terms of export repatriation and some other report earlier, what they call Global Integrity Report, which was published by some global institution based in, I think, Washington, D.C., combined together and reported in a different and misinterpreted. First one is that Global Integrity Report. They had claimed that from Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan people keeping money abroad over a period of time, but we don't have basically information or evidence to confirm that from Sri Lankan authorities side or Central Bank or Minister of Finance. That was a statement issued by someone else. And what I said is basically we implemented this export proceed repatriation mechanism from July onwards. That was as a result of in 2021 Central Bank brought in a rule that any exporter who export something from Sri Lanka and they are supposed to repatriate 100% of that export, say 1 billion exports per month, they have to repatriate 1 billion. And after that they should convert 25% of that into rupees. That is a conversion. So we started monitoring this from July onwards, and on the basis of October and September data, what I said is basically out of the exports that went out of the country, they have repatriated or brought into a bank system almost 100%.
This was during?
September and October, those 2 months, based on export data that we got from the customs and all the banks. They repatriated 100%, but they have converted only on average 25%. Discrepancy is that, say for example, what we understand is that when we export say 100 million worth of dollars, there's a component called local value addition. For example, garment industry, they say local value addition would be 50%. If the 50% local value addition, they should spend that 50% money locally, convert into rupees and spend that money. But the evidence based on the data available for us, it says instead of 50%, it was only 25% maximum. So there's a balance of 25% which has not been converted. Now we are asking questions from the exporters. So bank says we had converted only 25%. So you please tell us what happened to this 25% balance which was not converted. If you look at the country's role since 1994 until 2016, the law of this country allowed exporters to keep money abroad if they want. There was no repatriation requirement, there was no conversion requirement. This was legally permitted. Only 2016, then government brought back what they call repatriation requirement, that they have to bring that money into the country instead of keeping it. And then 2021 last year, because of the balance of payment crisis, foreign exchange liquidity issue, Central Bank issued a direction, not only you should bring 100%, but also you should convert the balance part and sell it in the banks. This is a new regulation. Again, if you look at why exporters are keeping money, this was again in the system where Central Bank kept the exchange rate at 203. People who earn foreign exchange knew this 203 fixed rate is not going to be sustainable. This is why we saw in the last year onwards, when Central Bank maintained 203 cap, and outside market people offering 240, 60, 50. So that was an incentive for exporters to keep that money in dollars and sell it outside at high rate. So everyone understood this is not sustainable. They have opportunity to sell at 260. Why should I sell it to the bank and get 203? Instead, I have opportunity to take 260 somewhere outside. That is where the incentive was created by the wrong policy of the Central Bank that time. Now the system is that we have little more flexible exchange rate regime, and there's nothing fixed here. It's a completely different system now we are employing. what banks are offering and black markets are all the same. Now there's no incentive for exporters to keep that money and selling outside because there's no incentive in the system. That we have addressed that.
So do you think this will encourage exporters to convert their foreign exchange?
That's what we have seen in the recent past. Only because of the exporters bringing out money to the country, have been able to provide, then reduce the queues, supply gas essentials, and country has become a lot more normal than those days. It's because exporters are doing their business, earning at least $1 billion a month and converting some of the parts and use some of the money to pay for their raw materials or whatever local payments. Once we get a lot more money, other inflows from the IMF or some going forward, we can relax this. You have to create right incentives in a market-oriented economy so that we encourage people to voluntarily bring that money, convert and do their business without having all these rules implemented. That's not helping the businesses.
The Sri Lanka cricket has announced its decision to take legal action against 3 individuals who recently appeared before the media and slandered the organisation. Accordingly, the SLC has stated and sent letters of demand to 3 persons including Asila Sampath and Sanjay Mahavatta. The letters of demand seeks 500 million rupees from each person listed in damages for the reputational losses caused to the SLC and its officials by the said false and derogatory statement. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the very same time for the very latest news. Have a pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.